All right, we made it to 8. That was the longest minute. Sorry about the echo, by the way, but hello everyone. I'm Sia. I'm only going to speak now to say thank you for coming and also that we're recording this. So it will be available on YouTube. But also, if this affects how you interact, we understand. Just want to make everybody aware that we're recording. Jarrett, take it away.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Jarrett Hurms, and I'm one part of the executive committee for Black Ties, as well as co-director when it comes to the Twitter and a few other things. Professionally, I am a data and business process analyst at Forge Consulting. Getting used to new job title. So I'm also trying to get used to saying that new job title. So it's my old job title, but long story short, I am in data management when it comes to the field of data, and then in addition, I am also an adjunct professor of decision and system sciences at St. Joseph's University. How tonight's talk's gonna work. So if you guys were at Black and Data Week back in November, you probably know I had a talk similar to this. That one's a little bit different to where I basically kind of talk for about 20-25 minutes about going into academia and tips such as that, and I kind of allow for you guys to essentially have a Q&A and you ask me questions and I essentially answer them. This talk will be a little bit different. I will talk about my journey going into teaching at the university level, and I will talk a little bit about and I will talk a little bit on some of what I like about it, experiences, stuff like that. But that's gonna be a more briefer part than my actual presentation, and I want to more open up the floor for you guys to either, if you are interested in going to academia, you can talk about what your career is and why you want to go into academia, what you would like to potentially get out of it, or anything like that, or if you have any questions in regards to either questions about my experience in teaching at the university level, if you want to ask questions, or if you want to ask questions on kind of how I balance it all and stuff like that. Any questions you may think about, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And then of course of course I will also be sharing anecdotes of my experience teaching at the university level, kind of sprinkled throughout tonight. Without further ado, so as I'd mentioned, professionally, full time, I'm a newly minted data and business process analyst. We'll actually be starting that role starting that role next week. I have been in data management, have been in data management for the past few years. For the past 3 years, I've been working at some of the major banks, so like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, a few other things. And then in addition, I'm also an adjunct professor of decision system sciences at St. Joe's University. I teach graduate level masters and MBA level courses in data analytics, primarily data visualization. I've taught business statistics at the graduate level before, and most recently, last semester, I wrote a entirely net new curriculum for a net new class called Master Data Management, which is what I've been doing for the past few years. And this upcoming semester, which will actually start next week as well, will be the first time I'll be teaching it first as an independent study, so one-to-one, and then in addition to my 2 sections of data viz, and then soon it will likely be implemented as a regular full-size class. So first, education-wise, I possess a bachelor's in quantitative economics with a few minors in math and English. Almost had a minor in philosophy, but that was an entirely other story, from St. Joseph University, which is in Philadelphia. After that, I had moved to where I live now, which is in Charlotte, North Carolina. But I also wanted to get my master's degree in somewhere within the field of analytics, and my graduate program had both an in-person and an online version, and I really loved the student-faculty relationships, and definitely prides itself in having good student faculty relationships, be able to really get to know actually know your professors, so on and so forth. So I kind of felt it was kind of the obvious choice for me to do my master's in business health analytics with St. Joe's University, but remotely from Charlotte, while in school full time, while I was also working full time. So did that, and then finished that by 2019. Again, all this concurrent with a lot of roles I've had in the past. So obviously it's kind of going now towards kind of how I got into teaching. So once we got into so once we got into about fall semester of 2019, I did a lot of research with a lot of the faculty in the DSS Department of Decision and System Sciences, and I got to know a lot of the professors, obviously throughout both my undergraduate and graduate experience. So they've all knew me very well, and I volunteered to do a lot of things with the department. Again, this is also kind of concurrent with some of my first few years of experience. So towards the end of my graduate program, I was actually asked by my department chair if I actually wanted to teach a few classes as an adjunct professor, kind of starting the 2020 semester. And part of me has thought about teaching. I know when I was an econ major, my admin assistant was kind of talking me into potentially teaching in the future, but I was more thinking about that probably when I kind of got more like 10 so years or kind of way more experience under my belt, kind of think about that, or more of like as a semi-retired kind of thing. Like once I retire, I'll just go into teaching. But the opportunity kind of did present itself to me. It would be virtually online teaching synchronous classes via Zoom. I already kind of I've definitely had a very established career within data management within financial services industry. So I figured, let me try this out for a semester and let me see if I like it. So I ended up after I finished the program and I'm becoming an adjunct, so I'm teaching what's called an overflow section. So an overflow section, now other universities will define them in other different ways, but an overflow section is essentially where if there's a lot of people who want to take the class, but all the sections are filled, but they can be able to add another section. So they basically added an overflow section of data visualization. So again, I essentially teach essentially that course is essentially learning the elements of data visualization, obviously dashboards, learning Power BI and Tableau. Well, first it was Click and Tableau. Now I'm using Power BI and Tableau for my classes. And from there I decided, why not go into teaching? So I did. So I began spring of 2020, began with a single section of data visualization, had my first set of 25 students. Admittedly, I was very nervous at first because when I was doing this, I literally became the youngest person to ever teach a graduate level class at St. Joe's. So admittedly, that in itself was a very nervous experience. So how it works when it comes to my teaching is we have our regular semesters have one of two different types of classes. You can either do an in-person 16-week class or an 8-week online class. We have like a spring A, spring B, summer A, summer B, so on and so forth. So I began summer B, spring B, but spring A was kind of more of my prep time, which I can obviously get into in terms of anyone who wants to know how prepping a semester is like, so obviously helped build my first syllabus, which I actually realized a few days ago. It was exactly 2 years from now when I first wrote my own syllabus for the first time. So I began that semester and really loved the interactions I have with my students. Got invited to teach a few sections in the summer, so I decided why not. And honestly, just like that, I really started to enjoy teaching, enjoy what I do in terms of sharing knowledge and being able to work with everyone. So, and with that, there comes a lot of benefits, both coming from I work in the industry, but I also teach in academia. So there's a lot of positive externalities that come out of it that definitely spill into my workplace, to where I definitely learn a lot from my students and I can be able to apply it into the workplace. And also, it's also another thing to be able to not just know data, but also be able to teach data, and being able to really take what I do on a daily basis and be able to really communicate that to other people, and having a diverse group of students, because I tend to teach anywhere from recent college grads want to get an MBA or a master's, to working professionals who've been out in the field for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So I've had junior level people, seniors, directors, VP, up to C-level people in my classes throughout these past 2 years. So really being able to really learn and grow within myself, being able to, one, obviously refine how I'm able to deliver the material and pedagogy styles to my students, but also being able to really keep my skills sharp, because obviously to be able to actually teach it, there's a lot of practice I'm doing when it comes to demonstrations, when I think about best practices, when I'm thinking about when it comes to thinking about other practices as well. And then in addition, being able to really be able to really communicate that to students. So all in all, I really have enjoyed teaching in these past 2 years, and and obviously this just scratches the surface as far as my experience. But again, as I mentioned, this is not going to be a session where I'm just simply just talking forever and ever. I wanted to definitely, one, get to know many of you guys, so you guys can definitely kind of talk about why you would like to, if you are interested in teaching at the university level, whether it be undergraduate or graduate. Why would you like to? What do you do? What would you like to teach? If you have any questions for me, you may certainly ask that. If you do teach, you can be able to kind of share your experience if you would like to share them as well. Essentially, there really is no limit on what you can ask, and of course I could be able to kind of share anecdotes from my past 2 years. So again, this is not just simply me just speaking forever and ever. So yeah, so see, is it kind of you? So I believe you should be able to request to speak, and I think, and then see, I presume you'd be able to just take someone off mute and they could be able to ask their question. Am I correct on that?
Yes, you are correct.
All right, cool. So if anyone wants to either ask any questions, whether it be if you want to go into teaching, or if you want to ask me a question on something of my experience when it comes to teaching, or if there's a potential story you want me to share, or anything like that, or I may be able to kind of bring up a story that may kind of relate to what you may be asking, feel free to request the mic and speak.
While we are waiting, I just want to say that I see a lot of people from different dimensions. Ooh, sorry about the noise. So I see people who are sports fans and who are in academia, and researchers, learners, and it's really nice that it's that theme of always learning. So hopefully someone here is going to share their dimensions and teach from that spectrum.
So I guess one thing, so is it. So again, if anyone does want to request a mic, you can still do it. But I guess one thing I guess I will kind of talk about is, and one thing that many people may be thinking about is, what is it like to be both a full-time working professional and potentially a part-time adjunct professor? And because when it comes to that, there's definitely a lot of balance. So obviously, when it comes to everyone in a regular life, they obviously have work-life balance. One of the things I've learned is that when you are working full-time and you're teaching part-time, it is not just work-life balance, it's work-life teach balance, because that is a whole ass other dimension that you're essentially adding your life. And some people, it's hard for some people than others, but it's definitely doable once you kind of really discipline yourself and also make yourself out of schedule. So for example, as I mentioned, my classes are, so I teach, my classes are online, but my classes are also synchronous online classes via Zoom. So kind of like with a regular in-person class, my classes have a specific meeting time. So for example, for example, last semester I taught two sections. They were Tuesdays and Wednesday nights, both from 7:45 to 9:15. So, and they were essentially two sections of data visualization. So how my schedule will work as far as the entire week is, first you have your full-time job. So your 9 to 5, what's actually paying the bills. And that, so obviously I will obviously get up and I will pretty much work pretty much the majority of my full-time work. And from there, and sometimes I might squeeze in the occasional student email, occasionally I might do a little bit of grading here and there, but for when I get up and turn on my laptop, I'm turning on my full-time work laptop and beginning that. And I typically do that until about 4:30 up to like 6, depending on if I have like a late meeting, or any pressing due dates or anything like that. So that's typically what I do within the working hours. Now, as I'd mentioned last semester as an example, I taught Tuesdays and Wednesday nights. So my students mostly have assignments due most weeks, and they're typically due, obviously, your standard Sunday at 11:59. One of the things I do is I would tend to grade on a rolling basis. So what I would do, so what I would do is, as the assignments were starting to roll in, I would then kind of go into Canvas and I would typically have what I call grading session, which essentially is times where I would pretty much just kind of sit down and really get through whatever assignments that have been submitted. So for example, the submissions will start rolling in about Thursday night-ish. So Thursday night, I might have 2 or 3 submissions. So I'll take some time Thursday night and get it and grading those 3 assignments, and I'll get a few more that night or Friday. So then I'll take some time. I might take some time either Friday night or Saturday morning to be able to get some of those graded, and then Saturday and then into kind of Saturday night and then Sunday afternoon, I will tend to get more of those assignments graded. And for the typical semester, I have upwards about 50 students because I teach 2 sections capped at 25. So by the time I go to bed Sunday, I typically will have graded about between 30 and 40, between 28 and 40 assignments, depending on when they submit them. So that will leave me about 10, 15-ish assignments that are submitted past, and it's been after the due date, and those will have to be graded. So then Monday, since I wouldn't be teaching that night, I'll typically make a hardcore grading session and be able to get a lot of those graded, and I typically will get those done by about Tuesday before I start teaching my Tuesday night class. Then of course you have course prep. So obviously you have to do things such as preparing your presentations for the next week, preparing your demonstrations, because I do a lot of demonstrations, especially when it comes to my database class. My MDM class, my Master Data Management class, I'm going to be doing some demonstrations in SQL. So I'll typically do those demonstrations kind of beforehand to myself, with kind of talking kind of out loud to myself, kind of doing those demonstrations. And I typically do that so it's going to be more refined once I really get into the actual classroom, because again, this is live recorded. Everyone's seeing this in real time, so obviously it's not like I can just make asynchronous videos and just post, although I do those occasionally to provide extra help videos. So I'll typically do my course prep, my lesson planning about Sunday during the day, and then into like Monday night. Again, this is based off of last semester. I was teaching Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And then of course I obviously get student emails, obviously sprinkled all through the week. So I typically email them. I typically get to them when I can, which is I tend to respond anywhere from right when you submit the email. You send the email, give you a reply back. if I don't know the answer, I will typically, one, at least acknowledge that you did send an email, and I will typically say I'll get back to you soon. I will typically kind of work off an answer, or sometimes I might just request if you wanted to do a one-to-one Zoom, office hour Zoom, we can be able to kind of discuss it in more detail and have them share their screen. And which leads to the last kind of leg, which is office hours, which I used to have posted office hours on my syllabus, but then I realized, one, I teach working professionals, so sometimes they may or may not be able to do it, and they have other classes, and we end up arranging times anyway. So I now use Calendly as a way for my students to schedule office hours. So I basically, for each week, I basically set the hours that I know for a fact I'll be free in my apartment. I can be able to do office hours, and then they can just click on the link, click on the time that they like to do it. They can put their question into a little box, into the box, and I also ask them to kind of email me whatever their question is, and then we can be able to address them. And it can be anywhere from course related question relating to assignments, question relating to classes, because I do often answer questions into registration and what classes they could take. I also ask questions in relation to career development and what they would like to do, if they want to go into data, if they want to switch into data or something like that, be able to do office hours associated with that. So that's typically how I kind of balance the week. And then of course, when you get to peak times, which is like midterm and finals week, that's typically when I'm kind of definitely at a higher band, kind of at a lower bandwidth things for other things, where I typically kind of dive into grading those, because grading midterms and final projects tend to take a little bit longer to take than regular assignments. So that's a little bit of it. Of course, there's other details which I can kind of get into in terms of questions, but is there any questions either in any form of a chat function, or if anyone kind of wanted to unmute yourself? Sorry, what were we gonna say, Sia?
Yep, I was just going to say, we do have questions. First of all, thank you for sharing that. That was a long, very detailed explanation, so thanks. And then we have a question from Auntie Kim, who is our co-founder, if you don't know and you're listening. And I see more people have come in, welcome. So her question is very specific. It's about data viz, which you mentioned that you teach. So when you teach this, how do you approach that? Do you only do it with live coding examples, or do you use a book? Do you use a mixture of both? Do you have other methods? How do you make your plan for that?
So first, thank you, Auntie Kim, for that question. But so yeah, so it's definitely a mix. So my class, there is a textbook that I do assign. So that is actually a book by Stephen Wexler called The Big Book of Dashboards. I think it's a really good book that definitely addresses a lot of things such as common mistakes that may happen in dashboard design and other things like that. So I kind of divide my class into two different things that they'll learn, and they'll learn both of which in any given lecture, which is the elements of visual design and how to be able to make an effective dashboard. So things to avoid doing. So for example, don't make your pie charts with 11 different slices. Don't have overly bright, be having overly bright colors, and even to more subtler things such as making sure that your titles are titled appropriately, so it's not descriptive enough for you to be able to understand what you're trying to display, but also not too wordy. And other things such as making sure even granular things such as making sure your tooltips are right, making sure that you're formatting your numbers correctly. So you have things such as having thousand separators. So you don't want to have a number be shown as 274,890,662, and so you can actually have the thousand separator and make it a little bit easier. And then the other part is essentially when you're thinking about the actual tools itself. So how I typically work my lectures is that I will talk. So the first half of the class, again, my students range from they've never made a dashboard before in their entire life to they make dashboards on a daily basis. So I have to be able to kind of talk with both sides of the crowd. So I will typically kind of start talking the first 4 weeks of my 8-week class kind of addresses elements of dashboard design, what are some of the most common mistakes. I will kind of talk about that. I'll relate that information when it comes to things in relation to the book. I will then also talk about things such as things within the readings. I will typically bring up examples from former students. I will typically make screenshots of either good examples or mistakes. And in the second half, I'll go into mix of special topics and how to make your dashboards more impactful, a little bit more advanced stuff. And then I will also then either in the beginning or in the end, I will typically do a demonstration in either now prior to the semester, it was Click and in Tableau, and now I'm doing Power BI in Tableau. So first half Power BI, second half of so first 4 weeks Power BI, second 4 weeks Tableau. So I'll go into whatever respective tool, and I will typically show them how to upload a data set, how to be able to make sometimes how to be able to clean your data, how to be able to make certain basic visualizations, how to be able to organize them to make sure they flow effectively. That's a huge thing. Some people will just be throwing some random shit onto a canvas and call it a dashboard. So how to be able to make it flow effectively, how to do things such as drill downs, containers, and other things, what they like to do. And of course, obviously, students will obviously have questions either by something that they want to do in a dashboard, or from they wanted to do something where they weren't sure and they were thinking about a prior assignment and saying like, how could I have done this or X, Y, or Z? And I'll typically kind of address that kind of as I'm demonstrating. So what I would say is data visualization specifically, I typically do a mix of both how to make an effective dashboard, which can obviously be supplemented by the lectures and the book, and then how to actually work with the tools, which is supplemented by my demonstrations you can find on the internet, and obviously from your actual you actually doing the assignments and making dashboards every week.
Thank you. I also see, my goodness, Coffee is here. I was like, that's not your name. I know your name. Who is huge on data visualization. If any of you want to just be blown away, you should definitely watch his recording of Black in Data Week. Coffee did I don't even know what to say. I think you should come up and say it yourself. Not to put you on the spot, but it was amazing. It was like, if I wanted to make music from food, colors, I forget how to describe it, but it was amazing to witness. Anyway. But yeah, let me know if you would like to speak. But do we have other questions for Jarrett? And if not, I have one, but I will hold. Okay, so we are all here because we're thinking about tips of going into academia, right? So we've mostly been talking about, how your days go and what you do. But really, if I was like, okay, I have been an analyst for 5 years, maybe. This is not true. I'm telling a story here. And I now want to not only share that knowledge with maybe a mentee, I want to start teaching like you are doing. How do you go from ideation to execution of said plan?
So very good question. So I would say it's a mix of both kind of figuring out what would you like to narrow down the teaching, because it's a good idea to have a good grasp of what you would like to teach. Sometimes a university, if you want to teach at a university, or a university wants you to teach in their program, sometimes they give you a class that is available that you can teach, and then sometimes you can find departments that may be offering a class that you would like to teach, and they may have availability. So one big thing is definitely do a degree of networking. So you can often sometimes talk with department chairs of whatever department you would like to adjunct in, and ask if there is potential openings to teach whatever the to um, to whatever you want to teach. So, for example, I do teach at St. Joe's. At the same time, I would eventually like to teach something in person eventually. So, obviously, that has to be more local within Charlotte. So, I'm thinking about UNC Charlotte has a really good new school of data science, and there's a lot of courses that I could potentially teach there. In addition, I also think about CPCC, Central Piedmont Community College. So that's the community college for Charlotte. So I think about wanting to potentially even just teach a community college course in something or like a data visualization or something in database and SQL or something such as that. So of course I would want to, so one, you would think about what department what you like to do would kind of fall into. So obviously if you're just a data analyst in general or somewhere within either data engineering or something like that, you want to define whatever your analytics department is named. Again, the department name can vary across many different universities. So some is Department of Business Analytics, some is something else. My department that I teach in is called the Department of Decision and System Sciences. So you can oftentimes email, and the reason why I say this is because you can go onto the HR website at university, and obviously you can see their faculty openings, and obviously you'll see like adjunct pool economics, adjunct pool English, adjunct math, adjunct business analytics, or so on and so forth. And those are usually, you typically submit your resume and it'll typically put into a pool. And then once they start making out the schedule, they'll then reach out to you saying, hey, would you like to potentially teach X or Y course? You can technically do that, but I would actually more recommend reaching out to either someone within the department or program director or department chair or so on and so forth, and ask what is their kind of need, what's their department, what is their department like, what courses do they offer, is there any courses that do need staffing slash obviously faculty adjuncts to teach, and then oftentimes they may ask if you they may ask like, hey, so I do like this conversation, would you like to potentially teach in our program? And obviously then they'll ask you to obviously apply, submit your resume, CV, your teaching philosophy, and you'll be able to do that. A few things you want to be able to think about as if you like to go into academia is, one is what level you would like to teach in. So you can teach either on the community college level, you can teach on the undergraduate level, you can teach on the graduate level, which is what I do. And of course, some people teach a mix. So some people may teach associate sciences and undergraduate class. Some people may teach a mix of undergraduate and graduate, so on and so forth. And then you also want to think about the modality. So when I speak about modality, I think about 4 different types of modalities. You have traditional in-person, which is going to be complete in the classroom. You're teaching in person in a classroom. All of your students are in person. And then online, I will then divide into two different types of online. So there is synchronous online, which is what I do, which is I teach. So my classes have a explicit meeting time. So again, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 7:45 to 9:15, or it could be like Mondays from 6 to 7:15 or something like that. Where you typically will be on Zoom, your students will be on Zoom, and then you'll typically teach like it's an in-person class, but obviously everyone's kind of in their own respective homes or wherever they choose to learn from. That's what I like to do because I do like to have some degree of interaction with students. I've had both in-person and synchronous online experience, and I do like both of those experiences. And then there's also synchronous online, which gives you the most flexibility because you can just pre-record lectures or pre-record videos videos for other people. At the same time, me personally, it is not as much my cup of tea because I do like the interactions with students. I tend to see that students do learn really well when they kind of interact with me or interact with the content. So some people that is very much their jam, and that is absolutely more power to you. And then the last one, which is more so become a thing because of COVID, which is high flex or hybrid, which is essentially a mix of in person and online. Now, that's going to be more based off of if your university is doing hybrid and or high flex because of COVID guidelines. It might there might be more of an increase kind of after COVID more subsides. I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. But that is another modality I wanted to at least kind of bring up to you guys.
Thank you. Does anyone else have thoughts, questions, follow-ups?
You can either request to speak, or if you want to, let's say, tweet out a question. If you want to tweet out a question to me, I can be able to answer that way, because I know obviously if it's like in Zoom, you can just put something into the chat, but you don't have necessarily a chat function. I'm not sure if you want to, let's say, tweet out a question and just at me or at Black Tides, we could be able to bring it up that way as well. So I guess one thing I could also share is engaging with students, because I think that's another important thing to be able to talk about is, so as I mentioned, I typically teach online synchronous classes. So again, my students, they attend class virtually. So many of my students have never, 99% of my students I've technically have never met in person, but many of my students I have had a lot of interaction. I have had a lot of interaction with, and I'm able to have a lot of interaction with, whether it be during the class or even after the class, whether it be they email me. Some former students may have my phone number, etc. So when it comes to engaging with your students, and this is something I had to learn over my first few semesters, because let me just also say this right now. If any of you guys are thinking about going into teaching you've never taught before, I promise you your first semester is going to be a little bit rough. Let me just say that right now. Don't have too high of expectations for your first semester. I was not that engaging my first semester. I mostly taught on and on for the entirety of the class. I didn't really give as much opportunity for students to be able to engage in material. So let me just say that right now, if you want to go into academia and you that first semester, don't have too high expectations. It's a learning process. But when it comes to engaging with my students, I try to create opportunities within each lecture for students to be able to engage with the content. So for example, one of my lecture delves into the types of dashboards and what level. So we have operational, tactical, and strategical dashboards. So strategical, more high level, something for more executives to see. Tactical is going to be a little bit more analytical, more mid-level. And then operational dashboards are going to be much more granular at scope when it comes to dashboards. So what I like to do is include a bunch of examples of dashboards, and I have them to kind of talk about, do they think it's operational, tactical, or strategical, and give the reasons to it. That way they can be able to, and sometimes at first my students are wrong, and that's a good thing, because I want them to be able to kind of think about that thought process, and other people may be thinking that same process too. While it may come to a wrong quote unquote answer, you kind of hear why other people, and I'll kind of challenge what they may say. Other things such as one textbook author that I used to have as one of my textbooks, but I now made it optional because I try to only require one textbook just to reduce the amount of cost of my students. But another good book that I've taught with is Stephen Few's book on information dashboard design. That book will go. That book goes into the chapter called the 11 most common mistakes in visual design, and I literally have an entire lecture solely on those 11 most common mistakes. And what I do is I show dashboards that exhibit some of those most common mistakes, and I have them to say what is wrong with this dashboard. And by then they typically have done 2 assignments already, so able to kind of engage with that and be able to see what is wrong with the dashboard, what could be improved, or even just in general, seeing the dashboard and seeing what they may not like, what may not be that intuitive. If they have questions on, how on the material on that dashboard because it may not be that intuitive. And that's so they're really engaging with the material, not just I'm showing them a dashboard and saying, this one's not that great, here's why. They're actually actively engaging with it. In addition, as I mentioned, I like to open the door for office hours, not just for if they have questions on the material or have questions on their assignments, but also if they want to talk about things such as I'm registering for my next semester. What classes do you think will be would be would be good class to take? Because I'm going to be very honest with you. The academic advisors for the graduate business school by university suck. Do not tell them I said that, but they suck. So I typically give very unfiltered advice as far as what I think would be good fits for them, as far as what classes to take, what professors are great and they would love and they would engage with, what professors are maybe trash, because some professors are trash, and I will tell you which professors are not that great. If students have questions on, I'm a recent college grad, I want to go into analytics, how do I get into analytics? I typically will engage with them one-on-one and talk about like what are their career goals, what they would like to do. I kind of give them tips on that. If there is a specific sector in analytics, they may ask me questions on X, Y, or Z. I can be able to address those. I've had 2 students one student who lives in the Philly area and one student who lives in the New York metro area. I have students from all over the country, and both separate students, separate semesters, wanted to move to Charlotte. So they actually want to know what's the data analytics market like in Charlotte. What's their cost of living and other stuff like that. So obviously I give very unfiltered advice on there. So I do talk about things such as what kind of jobs are out there, what I like about Charlotte, what I may not like about Charlotte, and other things as well, and have them be able to make an informed decision. But with those so all the things I just mentioned, all those ways are ways I have allowed them to engage with both the content and engage with me. And because of that, one, I have pretty good reviews. I even have pretty good rate by professor reviews. You can literally look me up on there. But also, my students do feel comfortable of asking me any questions, both within the confines of the class, but also even after the class ends. Sometimes I get emails or LinkedIn messages from students either asking questions or kind of catching me up on things in their career, so on and so forth. So I do enjoy that. I've recently had one student actually have his wife actually gave birth to their child for the first time, and actually I now get baby pictures of their new kids. So there's that, and then of course I've had ones to help get a job, and we still talk every now and then. So I say this all to say that teaching is not just for you to just sit in front of a classroom or sit in front of a Zoom and then talk on and then just get a check. Because to me, that's not exciting. It's more of being able to, be able to have students learn and engage with the content, but also being able to learn from my students as well. That's, to me, what I think is fun about teaching. And it's also something that's what I think is fun about teaching. And it's also something that I think is the most worthwhile part of being it. And that's why I think it's important to engage with your students, because it creates a better academic. One, it makes your job as a professor more fun for you, but also it enhances the academic experience from other people. Because I'm pretty sure many of you guys within your academic experience, you've had those professors who may be very engaging. You may still remember that professor. You can even bring up examples of professors. But yeah, so any questions, or if you want to either share stories of how a professor has made a difference to you, or either questions on something in relation to me teaching, or if you want to talk about a certain professor, or if you want to go into academia, if you have any questions on that or anything like that. So you can also tweet a question also.
Hello. We have a request here. Let me see. Hello, sir. It's good to see you. Let's see. Yep.
Hi, this is Pierre. Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Okay. Hey,
Ask away.
hey, Jarrett. Hi. And I'm going to apologize for jumping in a little later than normal. So I hope this is maybe something you may have already talked about. You mentioned a little bit about talking to students and engaging with them outside of the classroom. Wondering how do you just from your experience, do you deal with students when they have maybe complaints about course room material or things where they feel like they don't feel like they're being challenged as well? I'll say from personal experience, I came in once as an adjunct for DePaul, and it wasn't one of my, and to your point about the first semester, that was my first time teaching, and it wasn't quite my best point, basically. So I was hoping that you had some insights on, what are the limits that students can express concerns versus maybe not going a little overboard in how they are expressing concerns about the course material.
Mm-hmm. So I do. So at this point, being 2 years, I have gotten concerns either by the course material or anything like that. So one big thing is I'm huge into reading course evals. That's one big thing. One of the things I learned, and I'm gonna break this up in a few different ways. One is there's two different types of three different types of complaints. I would say complaints are the most valid where they're very valid complaints, and things where there are suggestions on how you can be able to improve a class or improve materials, and you can be able to make those improvements. Sometimes may not be mid-semester because you've already kind of started everything, but maybe for next semester, or anything like that. And then you have things where they're valid complaints, but you as an adjunct may not have as much control over, because obviously when it comes to being an adjunct, one of the things you have to learn is the amount of autonomy you have over your class is solely dependent on the university you teach in, sometimes even the department that you teach in, and even down to the individual course that you're teaching, because some courses have course masters, and some may give you more or less autonomy over the material. So sometimes there are things in the material that a student may not like or something, but you just straight up cannot change. And it doesn't necessarily take away the validity of that complaint. It's just you just can't change it. You can either make it less bad or say like I can't change this, or if you and the third thing, which is not feasible, this can't change this at all. And I don't want to confuse that with I don't want to change the material, because you should want to improve the material every semester. So each semester is always better than the prior semester. So one explicit example from that I've kind of gotten when it comes to my course evals is that, and this goes into a change I made for this semester, is that how the course is designed is you have one tool for the first 4 weeks of the semester. They do your demonstration. They have all their assignments in one tool for the first 4 weeks, and then the second 4 weeks they do demonstrations in another tool. So you can be able to learn the idiosyncrasies of two different tools because they're not all the same. Before, the build to the course was always Click and Tableau, because Click, it was cheap. They can get an easy academic license for it. And then Tableau is popular. It's very popular. The issue is that Click, and again, I'm not saying Click is bad, because I do believe it has its merits, but I do believe Click is a much more limited dashboarding tool than that of, let's say, Power BI or a few other ones. So, and in my course eval, some students would say things such as, I really wish we did Power BI and not Click. And especially when you think about usability numbers, more people use either Power BI or Click professionally. And I do understand that concern of like, a lot of these companies are using Power BI, and we didn't, and I took this visualization class and we didn't learn Power BI. So I think about that. Now, there is a limitation, and I actually brought this up when it comes to my executive community members. I may have even tweeted out a few times, is that half my students are have MacBooks, and Microsoft is inadamant on not having a Power BI for Mac. So I have to be able to figure out workarounds to be able to do that. So it's one of those, I can address the concern about not having Power BI, but it's also, I can't add a dime to say, okay, we're all using Power BI. If you have a Mac, too bad. I have to be able to figure it out. So that's why fall semester was like, I want to do Power BI, but I have to figure out how to work it for Mac students. So I figured that out, and now this semester, spring semester, I'm now doing Power BI and Tableau. Other things such as, sometimes they can be things such as they may find the material not interesting, and sometimes that does come down to how engaging you may be with the class. So for example, my first semester of course development, some people said the material was boring. And then my second semester teaching, my students said the material was pretty interesting. My material didn't change too much. The only difference is I allowed more opportunities for engagement. So sometimes it's not necessarily that the material is bad, but sometimes it's just you need to be able to find ways to be able to engage with the material better. And then sometimes I do try to find ways to kind of customize material, kind of make it a little bit my own, try to make some tweaks here, taking outdated detail here, taking outdated detail, take that out, replace it with something else, find something relevant for here, kind of be able to kind of craft the material to make sure it's better. And then be able to find ways where, let's say, it's not working, it's not engaging, it's not helpful, and try to find alternative ways. So for example, I had discussion boards all the way through last semester, but now I don't have them for this semester. But I have them because my grade totals have to add to 100%, and 20% has to come from somewhere. No, 15% has to come from somewhere. So I changed that instead of having discussion boards, I basically have them attend virtual events or things as whether it be a Twitter space, a virtual event, an in-person event, something like that, be able to write about it. So that's so they can be able to actually find something that's interesting and something that's relating to the class and be able to really engage with, as opposed to replying to a discussion board, replying to your peers with whatever fluff. So